Hey, welcome back. I'm Jenny, and if you're new here, well, thanks for stopping by. If you're a regular who comes by and listens to the random things that pop into my head, well, how you doing? That's what I do. I talk about random things that just pop into my head. You don't have to agree with me, but if you decide to make a comment, I do ask that you please be polite. So, when I was a kid growing up, there was a common saying that for my parents' generation, everybody remembers what they were doing when Kennedy was shot. And for our generation, and actually my kids' generation, we all remember what we were doing when 9/11 happened. So, y'all can tell me in the comments what you were doing that day, because we'll never forget. For me personally, I was at work. I think it was still Mamsie. I don't think United Healthcare had bought the company that I was working for yet, but I was at work, and I was still a fairly new employee. I mean, not new. I'd been there for a while. I knew what I was doing. I was comfortable in my job as far as, what I was supposed to do. And it was early in the morning. I was on the phone, taking calls from doctors' offices. Excuse me. I was on a pretty routine call. The lady wanted to get information. I don't remember if she was verifying insurance or what she was doing exactly. It's kind of irrelevant. And, but she had a list of things to go through. So it was going to be a longer call. And she says, there was a report on the radio that a plane just flew into a building in New York. She just made a comment. And we went about our business doing whatever it was that we were trying to do. And then she said, another plane went into the building. A building. And that was about the gist of the conversation at that point. We didn't know anything. But that was the first that I had heard about it. It was like, significant that a plane flew into an airplane and then another plane. And it never even occurred to us at that moment that, this was really, really bad. Not just bad, but really, really bad. And then it didn't take long. And, the entire country shut down when we realized that this was happening. So that's what I was doing. So anyway, I watched, on Netflix, American Manhunt, The Search for Osama bin Laden. And I will tell you, I'm not going to say anything that's going to, if the topic upsets you, obviously this is not a good topic for you. You might want to listen to another one of my videos. But watching this series is not going to be for everybody. Now, I will say that, it's a 3-part series, and of course the first series, they go over what happened that day, and there is footage of, the airplanes. But it's pretty brief. It's not, they don't go into it, step by step, minute by minute, like a lot of the, documentaries that are out there right now on this topic. So the show, we knew what happens. We got him, right? But the show is really from the perspective of the people who were doing the work. They were telling their stories about how, what their job entailed and how difficult it was, the strategies they used to find bin Laden, their frustrations because there were things that were they were trying to do, or opportunities that they had had, and for whatever reason, Obama slipped through these, Osama slipped through these, opportunities when we could have gotten him much sooner. The one thing that kind of bothered me about it, and maybe because it was all clustered into one presentation, there was a lot of footage of bin Laden actually moving around, talking, video footage, not just still pictures. And he was just the creepiest person that was ever born, I guess. But a lot of those little video clips I have seen over the years, just not all together in one place, like continuously for a period of time. So that kind of bothered me. I just, when you see somebody who's so evil, sometimes it's hard to imagine that they move, and that they I don't know. If you feel the way I do, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not really explaining it very well, and I'm sorry about that. But that part for me personally was difficult. It wasn't overwhelming, but I just didn't like seeing it. And there was controversy over almost every bit of this. And so, for instance, when the decision came, they knew where he was. They were planning on going in and getting him. And this was under Barack Obama. He was the president at the time. And a discussion with him and the vice president and all the top dogs, right? And not everybody wanted to go and get him. There were people that were reluctant to go and do this mission. And it was actually a very dangerous mission. They were using a helicopter that had the most up-to-date technology. They'd never used it before. They had to fly from Afghanistan into Pakistan. And Pakistan, if they had seen them before they got to the target, could have shot them, gone after them. So just getting there was difficult. Not even just going in. And so there was that. The people who were actually doing the work, oh my gosh, the stress these people must have been under. Some of them expressed, that they were criticized for not doing what they were supposed to have done, because it took 10 years, and even I can remember as a citizen thinking, 10 years? It's taking you 10 years? But there was a lot of complications involved in this, and so they explained a lot of that, and not just why they had to deal with the frustration of being accused of not doing their job, but also their frustration because they wanted to do their job, and it was not an easy job. And then afterwards, so there was an interview with the guy, the soldier that went in. He was the one that did the actual shooting of bin Laden, and so he told his part of the story of what it was like to be in the compound. And then after all that happened, even the people who were part of this mission, as far as the investigation and all the coordination that had to be done back here at home, kind of, had feelings about shooting somebody. Like, one lady she expressed that she didn't feel that, murdering, she felt like it was murder. Another lady, her feelings was completely the opposite. She didn't want him to be shot. She wanted him to really suffer because of the way we had suffered both as a nation and the individuals who were still mourning the loss of, their family that had been lost through these attacks, right? So there was that. And one of the top guys, he was a man, I can't remember his name, doesn't really matter. Anyway, I love what he said. It was so poignant. The soldiers were back in Afghanistan. Everybody was able to take a breath. It was over. Mission accomplished. The soldiers were safe. President Obama had given his address, his press conference, whatever you want to call that. He went home, and he says he went to the refrigerator to get a beer. And then he's like, well, you know what? I'm going to celebrate. This is more than a beer. So he went and he got a whiskey, I guess a shot of whiskey, and he picked up a cigar, and he was going to go sit on his back porch. And he paused for a moment, and he's like, is this really a celebration? We just killed somebody. And then he said, fuck them, or fuck him. That's what he said. He deserved to die the way he died. And he went and he had his whiskey and his cigar. And I kind of feel more the way he did. And I'll tell you why. Because I told you, I was sitting in my office doing my job. The lady I was talking to on the phone, she was sitting in her office doing her job. That morning, everybody in the United States got up and went about their usual routine doing what we do, and we were totally taken off guard. And that's what happened to bin Laden. They were in their house, it was nighttime, they were going about their usual routine, and they were taken by surprise. So yeah, I feel the way he feels. F them. That's how I feel about it. But it was very interesting how they confirmed that this place was his place, not just by the appearance of it, because it was where he was apparently a tourist area, and the house was a very large house, but because it's a tourist area, it's a relatively safe place to live, right? And yet they had these huge walls, and there was a lot of other stuff, like there was a fake door, as a kind of a decoy type thing. So there was a lot of indicators just from the appearance of the house that they were living in. But also, I'm not sure how they got these images, but there's footage of a man, they called him the pacer, who would go out into the garden area of this house. So still behind the wall, but in the garden area, not outside of the compound. And every day he would walk, but it's an aerial, so it's, they're looking down on somebody who's basically wearing, a head covering and flowing clothes and just walking. They couldn't really see his face. And what they did was they used some sort of a math formula and the shadow from the sun to determine that this person was the correct height. And then they did some comparisons.
You have an incoming call.
Sorry about that. Anyway, so I was talking about bin Laden and how they figured out it was him, and they used the sun, the shadow, to figure out his height. And then the videos of him moving, the way he walked, they compared that to the person that they saw walking in the garden, to compare his gait, because apparently for some reason bin Laden had they called it a limp, I don't know, but he didn't have a smooth stride. He had kind of they called it a limp. I don't know what it was. I guess it was a limp. There was something different about the way that he walked. And so that's how they knew that he was in that compound. But they never left. His specific family never, ever, ever went outside. So in a way, he kind of imprisoned himself before we ever found him. He never went out. There was another family there that would come and go. They burned the trash so that there was no way anybody could, check the trash. And, they had a courier that would go in and out, and it was a kind of secluded place. So when they went in, I think they were actually in there about 45 minutes. Well, before they even got in, there was 2 helicopters that were on this mission, and about 20 people total. Not all 20 people went in. I think there were some inside and some outside, if I understood the way they were explaining it. But one of the helicopters actually crashed. It had something to do with the vortex that was created because of the wall. And so the helicopter crashed inside the compound, so like in the yard. But nobody was hurt. It was just what they called like a hard landing. Nobody was hurt. So everybody was okay, and they went on and did their mission. And so they take you through it, the soldier that was there, step by step, how they went through it and what they had to do. It was from his perspective, first-hand perspective of somebody who was actually there. And you do get some clips of the recordings. I'm guessing they must have had body cam or something, just on their person. Nothing gory. They didn't, there were people who were shot, but they didn't show. You saw a foot, you know what I'm saying? You saw a foot, something like that, but you didn't actually see anything graphic. And they had to go up three levels to actually get to Bin Laden. Excuse me. And once they got him, they made a kind of a spontaneous decision to collect as much data as they could off of the hard drive. Well, not, they took the computers and whatever electronics they had, because they figured there may be other information on there that was valuable. But they had to hurry up and do it, collect what they could, and get out, because people in the neighborhood were aware of this helicopter crash and were starting to come out of their houses and try to figure out what was going on. And they kind of bluffed their way through it. They spoke the language, and so they were telling the neighbors, oh, it's nothing, it's just a drill, go home. And I don't know if the people really believed them, but they bluffed it enough that they could get out. And so everybody had to get on one helicopter to get out, and they took Osama's body with them. They didn't leave that behind. And they blew up the helicopter that hard landed. They couldn't fly it out, so they just blew it up because they said there was intelligence on there that they didn't want to, anybody to get their hands on. So they've made a bit of a commotion there, and getting out was probably the last leg of the trip. And it was, I think, 90 minutes from the compound to the Pakistan-Afghani border. So they had 90 minutes to get their tails out of Pakistan and be considered safe. And so even back in the Situation Room, where everybody was monitoring what was going on, they knew that they had gotten Bin Laden, and there was no jumping or cheering yet. Everybody was still very quiet and very silent. and still holding their breath because, of course, they wanted to make sure that our soldiers got out safe and that it really wasn't considered mission accomplished, I guess, until our people were in a safe place. And so, yeah, it was a long, hard, very tense period of time for some people. And then once they got everybody out, everybody could breathe a sigh of relief. And I thought it was really interesting, this little tidbit here. They were getting up to move on, and Barack, he had somebody who wrote his speeches for him. He says, I need a speech now, and the guy had to come up with something on the fly, because it really wasn't a very long period of time from when this happened to when Obama made the announcement that we got him, that everybody's safe, and we finally did it. And so he wrote that speech. It was really good. I mean, it was short, to the point. I remember it. I was getting ready for bed when this happened, but it was short, to the point. We got him, our soldiers are safe, and God bless America, something to that effect. And yeah, it was done. And it was the time afterwards when they were leaving the White House and the Situation Room, and the people were going home, and they went outside, one of the people who were relating this, and realized that it was very late outside for this time of night. And the people in D.C. who lived there, the residents of D.C., were going out to Lafayette Square and shouting, USA, USA, USA. And people were coming together again, and they were so happy that this was done. But this event, I just traveled just a couple days ago. This event changed things. I can remember before this, going to airports, you showed your ID, you got your ticket, you got on your plane, people could walk very far into, almost to the boarding gate to say goodbye. It wasn't such a big deal to get on a plane. Now, you have to get there 2 hours early because you have to go through security, and which, by the way, security is different in different airports. I was in Hartsville, Atlanta, and BWI. Those are the two airports that I flew on recently. And, you have to show your ID, and that's actually supposed to be getting even stricter now. And they x-ray your bags. You have to take your shoes off. They have dog sniffers. They have, and I found out, the dog sniffers at the TSA, I didn't know this, but my daughter's boyfriend used to work for them, and he says they're really looking for bombs. They're not looking for drugs. They're looking for bombs. And I asked him, the reason why I asked him about the dog sniffers was because when I was going from Atlanta to Baltimore, the dog hit on somebody. And so I saw that. They stopped the line. I couldn't see from where I was what happened after that. But he's like, yeah, lots of things can set the dogs off. And like if they had fired a gun recently, the gunpowder could do that. If they take nitroglycerin, because that's actually a medicine, but it's also an ingredient in a bomb, that nitroglycerin, I think people take for heart attacks. Those type of chemicals could cause the dog to hit, but maybe he had medications with that in his bag. I don't know, but it wasn't enough to shut down the whole airport, and so we didn't have to take our shoes off in Atlanta, but when in Baltimore, I had to take my shoes off, and they did like a body scan type thing there, so I don't know why it's still very secure both ways, but I don't know why they do it differently. There were no dogs in Baltimore and no body scans in Atlanta, but it just goes to show like how much this has changed. Just flying on an airplane in our country is, and I'm glad that we're doing it. I'm glad that they're doing it because I want to be as safe as possible when I get on an airplane, and I don't want people coming into our country and doing these kind of things. Or, I know people in our country, there's been, like Timothy McVeigh was a domestic terrorist, but it's kind of sad that we have to act that way too. So anyway, if you're interested, I think it's a new take on an old story, and it was worth watching. It's only 3 episodes. I watched it in a night. It was like, they're not full hour episodes either, so it was under 3 hours, and it was different. Definitely a sad topic, but worth watching.